Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I appreciate that immensely. I also love it when people leave comments, so if you want to leave a comment, I'm open to suggestions for videos, questions about this one, questions about a different video if you want. If you want to tell me how you do things, or if you have some constructive criticism, those are all useful to me, and I enjoy reading them. Today I'm going to do something that I've seen similar ones on the internet before when I'm perusing for design ideas. It basically from the top looks like out of proportion figure 8 or infinity symbol, and one side has a teardrop shaped stone in it, the other side not so much. It's basically if you took a slightly tapered big tube and squished it in the middle so it had two lobes. That's the way the band looks, and I'm going to cut a hole through it. So I think there's probably two different ways to do it, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But I picked out a really pretty Heliodor, which is the yellow form of beryl, which is, if you're not familiar with beryl, beryl is aquamarine, emerald, red beryl, Heliodor, morganite, goshenite. There's all different varieties of beryl, and Heliodor is the yellow type. So I think it'll make for a really pretty stone for this one, and so let's give it a try. Before we do though, I need to thank some groups of people. The first group is my patrons over on Patreon. They are my core group of supporters. I have a brand new one, Penny B. Thank you for signing up. I really appreciate your support. I think that you will find that that's a marvelous group of people over there who are both talented and willing to share their knowledge and show you what they're working on. So it's a great place to interact with some other metalsmiths, and I think you'll like it there. So thanks to all of my patrons, though. I appreciate your support. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, and we just passed 19,200, which is amazing. Thank you for that. Thank you also for the kind words, and the super thanks and the buy me a coffees are really helpful right now with the silver's spiking again. So appreciate that. All right, well, let's get to work on this project and see how it turns out. This is one of my design idea books that I have on my merch store. I have several different designs. This particular one has a convenient conversion chart on the back for fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters. I've been using the metric system almost exclusively anymore. A couple of the other ones have some different charts on them too. There's one that does American wire gauge to inches to millimeters, and I think that's useful as well. So get yourself one of those. They're also a great place to draw up your designs. So that way you always have a record of what you did, and these have a nice grid pattern in the background to help you keep things sort of symmetrical, which isn't necessarily my strength. Alright, so let me show you. This is kind of what I had in mind. Most of the ones I've seen online have diamonds up on the top in addition to this prong set teardrop shape. But I'm just doing silver, so not gold or anything like that, and I probably wouldn't put any diamonds in silver generally. Okay. So here's the stone. Like I said, it's a very pretty yellow beryl, and so that's going to be going right here. The way I'm going to construct this, and I think, like I said, there's two different ways to do it. My first thought was to make a tube out of 18 gauge sheet, which is 1.02 millimeters, and then just squish it in the middle by pinching it between two sharp edges like that. And you could probably do it that way, but I think from the top, in my opinion, I think you'll get a cleaner look if you actually do it in two pieces. So I think I'm going to do it in two separate pieces. Now I measured using a piece of wire how big this piece should be, and it came out to be about 25 millimeters. The height of this, as I drew it to where a size 8 would fit in there, and that's let's see, where did my ruler go? There it is. I don't remember off the top of my head what an 8 would be, so it's about 18 millimeters in diameter, 17 and a half, 18. So here's what I was thinking. I'd cut two of those and bend them into kind of teardrop shapes. File the ends. You notice it has a slight taper, so I'll have to actually taper these pieces that I cut earlier. So I figured it was about 9 millimeters per side, and it was about 10 up here, so if I do, let's see, 2 off of this bottom edge and then taper it down, that should get me pretty close. And this was about 11.5 and about 13 up here. So again, we'll just deduct, let's see, 1.5 is 3, so about 3 millimeters total off the edges here. That's going to make the top not perfectly flat up here, but then once they're soldered together, I can file the two, I think, flat, and should be good. And then we'll pierce a hole through the both of them. That is my plan. So I'm curious to hear what you think you would do if you were going to do this. Would you go with this plan, or would you go with a single piece and then crush the tube like that? Personally, I think this one will be better, but I'd be open to hearing your argument about whether that would have been a better route to go. So the only thing other than 18 gauge sheet and 18 gauge wire I'm going to use, I think that's it actually. Oh, 14 gauge square wire. And to save time, I went ahead and I made this out of some 14 gauge wire, and it was just trial and error till I got it to fit just right. And then you'll notice that I soldered it together so that these came down just a little bit lower, and then I filed it flat on the back. I also used my rotary tool to kind of emphasize that more. And now the only thing we're going to have to deal with on this, though, and it may not be enough to be a huge deal, but because that's a little bit lower on this side, and I'm not really going to be cutting seats so much as I'm going to taper this inwards a little bit so the stone sits in there and just take the prongs straight off the top over. I think I just answered my own question. I think if I taper this down a little bit steeper on this side than this side, it'll sit right, and then I won't have to worry too much about it. So I was thinking of ways I might solder a little bit of a little flat piece of sheet right there, something to raise just the inside edge so you couldn't see it from the outside. But I think it'll be pretty. So that's going to be sitting right there. And the way I measured for the size of this top part is I wanted there to be enough space to mount a prong here, a prong here, prong here, and prong here. So I needed to leave some sticking out from the stone. And as I taper this down inwards, it's going to make that top edge slightly narrower too. So this will sit down, and that'll give me a better idea where I'm going to solder those prongs on. But that'll be kind of towards the end when we do that, I think. So I think for now, let's start with tapering these things and seeing if we can do that now. Hopefully my calculations are correct here. No, I just got to go a millimeter in from each side. I was trying to make it more complicated than it was. So let's do that. Let's make a little mark there. Right there. I'm going to be super precise. But hey. I realized I kind of like the geometry aspects of some of this. That's why I like to do these kind of contemporary looking sorts of things. You have to figure out angles and stuff like that. So just going to file it a little bit to smooth it out after I cut it. And then I went ahead and marked this in the center right there. I think in order to really get it going, since it's 18 gauge, it's kind of hard to bend. Let's put some bail making pliers on it. And sometimes you can use a table for leverage. I don't know if I can get a good enough grip on this with these nylon jawed ones. Oh, I know what I should be using. Duh. I made this a little while back. I deserve a duh for that one. Sometimes I start thinking about something and how I'm going to do it, and I miss an obvious, easy sort of solution. Okay, so I did that one the hard way. We're going to try using that block and some other strategies for the second one, because I don't think that was probably the easiest way to do it. If I had forging stakes and everything, it'd probably be a little bit easier, but so far I think we're doing all right. So I am going to use this to get those to lay pretty close to each other. But I'm kind of looking the way I want it to look. So I think let's try and do the second one. 1.5 on either side. That's what I like about doing stuff like this, is it makes me think of different ways to do stuff that I hadn't thought about, because I've never done a ring quite like this before. So it's kind of a fun experiment, you know. How do you get it to look the way you want it to look? I don't think I did that far enough out. Looks pretty good. Let's measure to the center. Now let's see if we can do this smarter this time. Not really in the center there. so far. This one we got to think a little bit about, you know, the shape of the stone itself, because I want this to, this one's a little narrower than that one because the stone is a little bit wider like that, so we have to keep that in mind when we shape this as we go. So I feel like these need to bend in more sharply now. I think it needs to be filed down quite a bit, so I'm going to spend some time filing. I think I cut it significantly too big. I'm just going to do this for a while and then try and get those two ends together again. Curious how you would do this as well. I'm kind of playing it by ear as I go, and probably not choosing the right way to do it, but we're getting there. So I'll be right back. Okay, I got these kind of where I want them to be. But I think in order to go to the next step, we need to solder the inside edges of these. If you've never been to my channel before, I use hard silver sheet solder most of the time, and I use a liquid flux that I dribble on with a dropper bottle. My torch is a Silversmith model. It draws in atmospheric air through these little holes to mix with the gas, and it burns acetylene. It's a great torch, and I use a #1 tip. So let's give this a try. The other thing I do is I do a lot of pick soldering, where I pick up some solder and put it where I want it to go. And I will show you how to do that. But I do have a video, if you're interested, a pretty good video up there that gives a little more complete explanation. It's a really useful skill. It kind of took me to a different level. Okay, let's give this a try. cool those off, and then we'll do a little filing and see if we can get those to fit nice together. Need to do a bit more filing on this one, I think. So maybe a bit. Okay, so I'm going to set these in my magnesia block. Make sure I get them right side up. And that's about perfect, I think. Well, we'll give it a try and see anyway. And make sure I have some solder. Quite a bit of mass in this. So I'm going to pick up some solder, and then we're going to turn the torch up a bit. Make sure we get those both up to the soldering temperature. Which in the case of hard silver solder is about 1450 degrees Fahrenheit. I should probably look up what that is in Celsius. Cool that off and take a peek at it and see how it looks. So I got a partial penetration here, so I'm gonna solder that again on this side a little bit. Alright, well I'm going to do a little bit more filing. File this bottom flat, and then I'll file the top flat, and then we'll solder that other thing up. So I have this filed down flat on the bottom and the top pretty well, and I did a little bit of creative dremeling to make this fit a little better, and I'll probably have to do some further shaping with the rotary tool to make sure it fits on there and looks continuous. But I think we need to solder this onto the top now, and so I'm going to flux and pre-melt a little bit of solder on the underside of the figure 8. There we go. I'm going to let that cool off for a minute. Most of the mass is in the bottom piece here, so I'm heating that so it gets hot enough to stick to the solder that's already on the other piece. The other piece will reach temperature just by being above this. I'm going to let that pickle for a bit, and then I'm going to clean up that top seam and see how it looks. And then we'll, I think we'll add the prongs next. And then after that we can scribe out a circle on it and cut it out with the saw for the band part. Okay, I got everything kind of cleaned up here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little diamond burr that's kind of tapered, and I'm going to cut a kind of a bevel going down into the spot where the stone's going to sit. Yes, that's pretty nice in there actually. So I'm going to polish that up a little bit with a wheel with some polishing compound so it's a little bit smoother in there. And then we can add those prongs, cut out this circle, and I think we'll be done. So, except for setting the stone. I polished that up like I said a little bit. Oops, there's a spot that's kind of flat. I'll polish that segment up before I'm done at some point. So to put prongs on the top of this, I took some 18 gauge wire and I soldered it into an X. And then I bent it so that I could see where I wanted these prongs to be attached. I put a little black mark on each of them. And so what I'm going to do is bend these down, those points. And then I'll spend a little time getting these. Well, actually, I'll have to cut them off first, but let's cut them off about the same length. Don't have to be too long. One thing though, when I get these lined up, the one over here needs to be slightly longer than the one over here because this is lower on this side than it is on that side. Well, I have a thought, just to make it a little easier. Let's solder the two back ones on with some hard silver paste solder. And then we'll get the other ones positioned after these two are attached well. That'll make it easier to get those touching nicely. This stuff you don't need to flux when you're using it, but you can if you want. The smoke you'll see is just the binder burning off. I'm not super familiar with paste flux. I've only recently started using it. but it is convenient for some situations. The next feeling is we need to scratch out our hole here. This one here is the one that's a size 8. So, let's do this. What we can do then is kind of center this. Last thing I'm going to do is cut that out. So I'm going to drill a hole first, and then I'll put probably a little bit bigger saw blade on, because this is two thick pieces of metal that I'm going through, and we'll saw that out. That's really messy. The good thing is I'm better at using my rotary tool to clean things up than I am at sawing. So I'll get that cleaned up and then I'll throw the pickle. I got everything all polished up, and I got the stone. I cut the tops off of the box that I'd created with those little prongs, and I'm going to make sure this is sitting how I want it to sit. And I do this a little differently than some people do, but I'm going to kind of pull those over a little bit. So I usually cut these off a little shorter once they start bumping into each other. And once everything's sitting how I want it to sit, I'll gradually push these down over and gently. Last step before I clean it up on the top of the prongs with an abrasive silicone white wheel, and then use a blue one to polish it up. About midway down the girdle facets, the ones between the girdle and the crown, or excuse me, the girdle and the table facet, if there is a table facet, should come about halfway down that. and then I'll make some fine-tune adjustments as I need to. But I will also, once I thin these out just a skosh at the top, I'll be able to kind of push them down a little bit harder and not worry about damaging the stone. But that's going to be the ring. So it's kind of what I was looking for. Alright, I'll get that finished up and take some better pictures and put them at the end. Okay, well that was the kind of squash tube looking ring. So I think I probably had better come up with a better one for that. Infinity ring type 2? How about that? If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button before you go, and I'd love it if you'd take a moment and check out my main channel page. I have 450 plus videos over there. I've been doing this 3 years now at 3 videos per week, so there's quite a collection of content. I'd hope to think that some of it's valuable. Based on the input I'm getting from people, that they're getting some useful stuff out of it. I think it is. So check it out, subscribe to my channel, make sure to hit the video description down below. There's some important links there. If you want to check out my Patreon, there's a link to that. If you want to buy my newest ebook, which is the guide to 2024's tutorials, it's a useful tool that puts a whole bunch of different projects right at your fingertips. I think it's a great value at $35, or you can get my 2 years worth of those, 2023 and 2024, for a slight discount at $60 for the 2. So I'd love it if you'd download those. The other thing is there's a link to my merch store as well, and you can get those nice design idea books there. I think those are useful as far as keeping track of your projects. So thank you for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.